Dakota, your sense on this, especially since, right, I mean, a lot of that focus is in terms, was, hey, we've got to be able to fight tonight. And the point that they're making is that in that myopic focus, we're losing the ability to actually fight and win tomorrow.
So their op-ed, whether they intended it to do so or not, reveals an ugly truth. And that is that the United States has enjoyed 30 years of really uncontested ability to do whatever it wanted militarily anywhere in the world. Nobody was around in the 1990s. It was this unipolar moment. And then since 2001, we were conducting operations against non-state actors like the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and Islamic State and whatnot. No navies, no air forces, no artillery in a meaningful sense, no armor capability, right? I mean, these were all very close-in fights, and the U.S. could deploy anywhere. We could sustain operations. We could replace units completely uninterrupted. From mobilization to ports of debarkation, where you receive them in theater and go on and do your business. Not to discount roadside bombs and sniper attacks and those sorts of things, but in terms of waging war, you could do whatever you wanted. And the size of the force needed was such that the totality of America's military could sustain those operations essentially indefinitely. I mean, that was the reality. Today, when you start assessing what would be required to contest any battle space against a major player like China or Russia, or even Iran, where you've got missiles involved, you do have naval power, you have fairly late generation aircraft, certainly very capable anti-aircraft defense systems. I mean, it's just a different world. So to Dave's point, the average age of an Air Force fighter is 30 years old. The average age of an Air Force tanker aircraft, I think, is 50 plus, right? Yep. So you can't take something designed and built in the 70s, 80s, fielded in the 90s, what have you, and fly it against a latest generation S-400 system. I mean, an integrated air defense system. It's just not going to work. And you can't presume that the U.S. Navy is going to sail something like 8,000 miles from the U.S. West Coast to conduct operations in the South China Sea, where you have limited access to ports. Our allies have seriously underinvested in their capabilities. And so if you look on a daily basis with 60 U.S. Navy ships deployed in the Western Pacific against 350 plus PLAN, Chinese Navy ships, I mean, you're starting at a 6-to-1 disadvantage. So we've been able to ignore the reality of relatively small budgets. And by small, I mean not keeping pace with inflation and not keeping pace with the increasing costs of these primary platforms. That if you look back to the Vietnam War, it cost 16 times more than the rate of inflation to equip a US soldier. It costs 5 times more the rate of inflation to field a replacement ship or a tank. And I believe it's something like 3 or 4 times as much for an aircraft. So just to keep pace with the reality of modern technologies, if you maintained a defense budget, even steady with inflation, you still have less and less purchasing power, and will have a military that is smaller and smaller and older. So when Jim Mattis came in as SecDef, he was alarmed at the current state of combat readiness of the force that we currently have. And so again, this op-ed really reveals that, and that the service chiefs feel that they have to place more emphasis on future combat readiness and capabilities, even though that would mean shortchanging current readiness. So either they believe, and this is where I'm critical, that we really won't go to war in the next 10 years, right? And we can kind of take a pause on sustaining current capabilities in order to invest in the future, which is a bad bet, or they're having to sacrifice knowingly current capabilities in order to be prepared for some battle that may occur in the future. So, and the history of that is just horrific. The Marines had a 1970s technology AAV, amphibious assault vehicle. It tried with the triple AV and then the EFE that was canceled. And they're just now fielding the amphibious combat vehicle, the ACV, right, in the year 2021 to replace a vehicle that was first introduced in the 1970s. So the U.S. does not have the luxury of picking one or the other. We have to do both, current and future, but our budget environment and the unwillingness of Congress to address risk as a reality has just put our services into this very uncomfortable situation.
Thanks for watching the Heritage Foundation's YouTube channel. With more than 500,000 members, we are the nation's largest conservative research and education institution. We believe the principles and ideas of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing. Please help us further our mission by subscribing to this channel and sharing our videos with your family and friends.